All right, we're about to journey way, way back in time. Back to the cradle of civilization itself, a sun-drenched land that the ancient Romans called the Orient.
So what does the Orient even mean? Well, for the ancient Romans, it was actually pretty simple. It was just the land to their east, the direction of the rising sun. The name stuck, and today we use it to talk about the region we more often call the Middle or Near East.
And this brings us to the huge question that really frames our whole story. I mean, when you look at this region, you see a land of crazy heat and very little water. So how on earth did the first great civilizations manage to pop up in such a tough environment?
To figure that out, we have to start with the landscape these early people were dealing with. So let's take a look at the geography of the ancient Orient. Just try to imagine surviving here. You're up against these vast, sprawling deserts, rugged mountain ranges, and a climate with scorching temperatures and almost no rain. Seriously, on the surface, this looks like the absolute last place on Earth you'd want to try and build a society. But, and this is key, hidden inside this unforgiving landscape was this one area with incredible potential. A place where life couldn't just survive, it could actually thrive.
And there it is. Look at this arc of green, what we call the Fertile Crescent. It sweeps up from the Persian Gulf, traces the path of two huge rivers, and then curves down toward the Mediterranean. It was literally an oasis in a world of brown and tan.
The name itself, which comes from the scholar James Henry Breasted, just says it all. This wasn't just any piece of land, it was fertile. This was the cradle, the perfect spot where civilization could finally plant its roots and start to grow. So, the potential was there, for sure. But how did early humans actually unlock it? How did they go from just getting by in this crescent to building massive cities and empires?
Well, the answer comes down to a revolutionary leap in technology. For ages, people were either nomads or they were small-time farmers totally at the mercy of the rain. But then, a real game-changer came along that pushed them to a whole new level. And that innovation was large-scale irrigation. By figuring out how to systematically dig canals and channel water from the great Tigris, Euphrates, and Nile rivers, they weren't just watering a few plants anymore. They were engineering an agricultural surplus. For the first time ever, they could grow enough food to support a huge population that didn't have to move around. And this boom in farming is what gave rise to the world's first two great civilizations. But what's so fascinating is that even though they grew up as neighbors, their geography pushed them to develop in two completely different ways. So first, you've got Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. The land was so fertile it made them incredibly wealthy. But its geography was its biggest weakness. It was a wide-open plain, totally defenseless. This made it a magnet for invaders, which led to this really turbulent history where empires would rise, get rich, and then get conquered by the next group. Now compare that to Egypt. Egypt was basically a natural fortress. It was totally surrounded. You had massive deserts on either side, the sea to the north, and these impassable river rapids, or cataracts, to the south. This isolation shielded it from constant invasion, and it left their unique culture develop in incredible stability for thousands of years. And this comparison just lays it out perfectly. On one side, Mesopotamia, open, easy to get to, and because of that, it was volatile and always changing. On the other side, Egypt, insulated, protected, and incredibly stable. Geography wasn't just some background detail, it was the main force that shaped who they became. Okay, so you've got huge populations now, and these massive, complex irrigation networks that everybody's life depends on. Well, that creates a brand new problem. How do you get thousands of people to work together on these huge projects? Right? This is the fundamental question of government. You can't just ask people nicely to go dig a giant canal. You need a system of control, some kind of authority that's powerful enough to get an entire society moving on these essential massive tasks. The solution they came up with was theocracy. A theocracy is a system where the right to rule doesn't come from the people, it comes from the gods. The ultimate authority is divine, and the king is just its representative here on earth. And here is a really crucial difference. While both places were theocracies, they saw it very differently. In Mesopotamia, the king was the god's chief representative, sort of like a high priest with a crown. But in Egypt, the pharaoh wasn't just speaking for a god, he was a god, a living deity walking among people, and that gave him a completely different level of power. And that's how it all connects, you see? Our story comes full circle. It all started with a simple practical problem.
How do you control the rivers? The solution to that, getting massive groups of people organized, created a new problem. How do we control the people? The answer they found was divine authority. So from the need to manage water, the idea of the God King was born, a concept so powerful it would define and shape these civilizations for millennia.